Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The Sadness, a Taiwanese horror movie from 2021 that has been making some waves on the internet. The plot is essentially about a young couple who are trying to reunite after their city is ravaged by a plague that turns its victims into deranged, bloodthirsty sadists. The opening of the film is fairly low-key, and we have our lovebirds, and they get into an argument over vacation plans. Then, the boyfriend drives her to the subway station because it's a work day, but something feels off, like all morning. They notice some odd stuff, like a person standing on a roof with some blood on their clothes, which is kind of weird. Some parametics are carting away a bloody dead body at one point, and then they see a police car that has all four doors open, but no one's around. So it's just some weird stuff going on here early in the morning. So the dude drops his girlfriend off, and then he goes to a restaurant, and that's when the crap hits the fan hard. People start murdering each other, you know what I mean? And this, plague, or whatever you want to call it, spreads very fast. So the number of bloodthirsty murderers that are roaming the streets rises exponentially. And from that point on, our two protagonists are simply trying to get back together and survive the chaos. Now, The Sadness is heavily reliant on its violence. It is. So if you're someone who cannot handle bloody, gory, grotesque murder scenes, do not watch this film. You're going to turn it off by the 20-minute mark. No joke. I'm not exaggerating. And I'm also not exaggerating when I say that this movie does kind of remind me of those French extremity films from the 2000s. Stuff like High Tension, Inside. The Sadness is about that violent. It is that violent, I think. There's also a mean-spirited tone to this. When you fall victim, or when one of the characters falls victim to this plague, as I'm calling it, you basically lose your mind and derive great pleasure from hurting other people. That's kind of the effects of it. So there's a very strong exhibition of depravity in these acts of violence because the infected people want to extract as much pain and suffering and terror from their victims as humanly possible. So there's some pretty messed up, demented stuff in this movie. And that includes some sexual violence as well, so be prepared. But if you're someone who can handle this stuff in your movies and you're in the mood to watch something nasty, The Sadness offers quite a bit of entertainment value. It's very fast-paced, so much so that it actually feels shorter than its 1 hour and 39-minute runtime. There's legitimate tension and suspense because the dangers are strongly established. If you like one of the characters, you do not want them to get attacked by one of these deranged people. There are multiple set pieces that are memorable, and some of my favorite scenes take place in the subway and the hospital. And one of the important things that helps to make all this work, just something I noticed while watching this, is that these, infected people are intimidating and scary, but they're not really obnoxious. I'm not annoyed while watching this movie. I'm fully immersed in it, and I think that's pretty important. There are some films that have come out over the, over the course of all of cinema, really, where you'll have a bad guy or a bad group of people, and they just act so obnoxious all the time, it kind of takes you out of the film. You know what I mean? I'm annoyed watching stuff like that, but you don't really get that here. These people are messed up, and they get great pleasure from hurting people, but they're I don't know, it just feels like more of a genuine threat here. So that was good. Cinematography and production values are good. The music is effective as well. There's background ambient score and the faint sound of a record. If you've ever heard a record after it's done playing, and after during the rotations you'll hear a little a tiny, you barely hear it, and they use that a lot in the film. You probably only notice it if you have headphones on, but it's in there, and it creates a little bit of an unease from the viewer. It's a pretty cool sound effect. Special effects are very good. Blood and gore is convincing, and there's a lot of it. The makeup is fantastic, because these people who are infected, they start acting crazy, but they also it changes like their physical appearance, like their eyes turn black. You know what I mean? Their skin becomes like colored differently, and it like degrades. If you've ever seen the Lamberto Bava film Demons from 1985, that's the Italian flick, you'll have an idea of kind of what to expect in that regard. You know, the makeup and stuff like that. In fact, The Sadness would actually make a fine double feature with Demons because of the similarities in premise. And at one point in the film, they actually, if I remember correctly, they actually mention in a sentence that one of the effects of this plague, or whatever you want to call it, is that the people act almost like demonic, like they're possessed by a demon. So there's definitely some parallels you could draw. And I do think the plot of this film would have been more interesting if they went the demon route, like full on. Because this is still kind of like a biological spreading type thing. But if they went full on demon, I think we need more films like that, because it adds even more creativity, and I just find it more interesting instead of like, you know, constant biological spreading of stuff. But just a personal preference. But just so we're clear, there are some direct references to the real-life pandemic, and there are a few scenes of black humor in this. Look out for the television broadcast by the government leaders. But overall, there's very little story or character development in this. I honestly don't mind, because I was so entertained and it moved so fast, but my biggest problem with this film is the final 15 minutes. It's not bad, it's still good, but it's basically just exposition and then like a small confrontation. You know what I mean? Some dude explains the virus and stuff like that, and like it doesn't feel like a climax. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of feels like it fizzles out at the very end of the film instead of crescendoing to a great conclusion. But thankfully, we got a bucket load of craziness before that point, so ultimately the movie does really satisfy. So, bottom line, if you like violent, depraved movies that are fast-paced and thrilling, you should check out The Sadness. I've watched it twice in 3 days, I think, already. I purchased the expensive German Steelbook, which has both a Blu-ray and a 4K disc in it. But I have heard that it's going to be released on Shudder in May, so I think in a few weeks or a week and a half or something like that. I heard May 12th maybe it'll be out, so you can watch it streaming on there. And then if you really like it, maybe buy the expensive Steelbook. And if you're interested in some other films, I did a little marathon leading up to this, because The Sadness is in like this weird pocket of subgenre of horror. It's not a zombie film really, because the people aren't dead. You know, it's not really a fast zombie movie, because the people in this film still can think like a human, like they're nuts. They've lost their mind, but they still think like a crazy person, if that makes any sense. They don't have complete lack of thought like a zombie would. So they can like plan and do stuff like that. So this is like a very like a subgenre. And some other films in the subgenre would be the Romero film The Crazies from back in the day. Not the biggest fan of the original. I actually like the Crazies remake more, with Timothy Olyphant. The Crazies remake from 2010 is actually surprisingly good. Nightmare City from 1980, that's another Italian one. And then Demons, of course. So you could do a little marathon leading up to The Sadness if you want. But in any case, I hope you have fun with this one if you can handle it. And as always, I'll see you next time.